So I passed out this essay called Keanu Reeves' Life is More Tragic Than You Think. It's, like I said, it's very, very difficult to find out this information about Keanu Reeves. He doesn't talk about it much. He doesn't wear it as a burden. He doesn't look for sympathy. It's very difficult to find this. And I'm not exactly sure all of it is 100% true. But I've heard this a lot, that he had a difficult time growing up, and he's been able to come through a lot of difficulties in his life. And I showed you, how he keeps doing these spiritual movies. Little Buddha. The Matrix has actually been identified by Buddhist scholars as they're using science as a vehicle for a Buddhist allegory about being trapped in a deluded, self-created reality, and the architect is one's own ego. And the end of the movie, at the end of the film, he doesn't escape the Matrix, but he transcends it. It no longer has an effect on him. He sees through it. At the end of the film, it's really, really odd. I can't show it in church because it's too violent, but people try to shoot him with bullets. But it's all an illusion. None of it's real. And it looks like it's magic, but he finally sees through the illusion. And he goes like this, and the bullets stop in midair. And he just goes beep, 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 beep. And they all fall to the ground. And so, he's transcended this deluded reality. So he lives in it, but he's not of it anymore. And he actually flies away at the end of the film because he can do anything he wants now. He has supernatural powers. He can see clearly. So I'd like to read this with you, and then we're going to read about the clip from the Steve Colbert Show, and then I'd like to show it to you. So, at first glance, Keanu Reeves seems to have it all. Many talented actors only dream of attaining Reeves' level of fame and fortune, the fruits of labor of an acting career that has spanned 3 decades. Although his agent thought he should change his name when he was first started acting, Reeves has been very successful using the name his mother gave him. The Canadian actor has 97 credits in his IMDb filmography, including 1 rumored project and 7 that have not yet been released. Reeves' successful career has paid well too, making the star one of the richest actors in Hollywood. Looks can be deceiving though. The story of Reeves' personal life is heart-rendingly sad. Beginning at the age of 3, Reeves has endured one tragedy after another. Keanu Reeves' father walked out on his family. Reeves was born in Beirut, Lebanon, to a showgirl and costume designer, Patricia Taylor, and geologist Samuel Reeves. When Keanu was just 3 years old, Samuel walked out on the family. A single mother, Patricia moved his family around a lot during Reeves' childhood, raising him in Hawaii, Australia, New York, and Canada. Reeves attended 4 high schools by the time he dropped out when he was only 17 years old. He credits his struggles with dyslexia for making his education a bigger challenge than it is for most people. River Phoenix was Keanu Reeves' best friend. Actor River Phoenix was considered to be one of the most gifted actors of his time. He worked in films like Stand By Me and River's Edge, which were universally praised by critics. Phoenix and Reeves met on the film I Love You to Death and quickly became best friends. When Reeves saw the script for My Own Private Idaho, I have a Dharma talk on this as well. There's a song by the B-52s about, and I think it's this movie too. I don't mean to disparage Idaho, but this is a saying that you're living in your own private Idaho, right? You're kind of living in your own make-believe world, almost like the Matrix. So for the script, My Own Private Idaho, he knew Phoenix was perfect for the role. In December 1989, Reeves rode more than 1,000 miles on his motorcycle to hand-deliver the film's treatment to Phoenix and persuade him to take the role. It was during the filming of My Own Private Idaho that Phoenix developed a drug addiction that would later claim his life. In 1993, Phoenix died of a drug overdose outside of the famed celebrity hotspot Viper Room when he was 23 years old. The actor reportedly took a lethal combination of cocaine, heroin, and Valium. Reeves was also 23 years old at the time. The death of Keanu Reeves' daughter and girlfriend. Just 5 years after the death of his best friend, Reeves met David Lynch's assistant, Jennifer Syme, or Syme, I'm not sure how to pronounce it, in 1998. The pair fell madly in love, according to Reeves, and conceived a child 1 year later. On December 24th, so that would be, Christmas Eve, 1999, while Reeves was filming The Matrix, Ava Archer Symes Reeves was stillborn. The grief of losing a child understandably strained their relationship, and the couple broke up a few weeks later. Unfortunately, the tragic story doesn't end there. A year and a half later, Syme was on her way back to a party at Marilyn Manson's home when she was killed in a car accident. She was only 28 years old at the time of her death on April 2nd, 2001. Reeves addressed his never-ending grief in a 2006 interview. Grief changes shape, but it never ends, Reeves told Parade. People have a misconception that you can deal with it and say, it's gone, and I'm better. They're wrong. When the people you love are gone, you're alone. Reeves cited the deaths of Ava and Symes as the reason he avoids serious relationships and having children. Tragedy hasn't made Keanu Reeves bitter. Reeves' life story is unarguably sad, but it is also inspiring. Any one of the above events is enough to make almost anyone bitter, but Reeves seems to have only gained more compassion and empathy along the way. Despite all of the pain and misfortune he has endured, Reeves has become just as well known for his random acts of kindness as he is for his movies. Although Reeves doesn't like to talk about his painful past, he does tend to portray characters who have endured similar hardships in life. In John Wick, Reeves' character is an assassin who is motivated by the loss of his wife and dog. That's the part I like. I think dogs should never be killed in movies. Reeves told The Telegraph that Wick's grief allowed him to connect with the character. For me, it was John's grief, and it made it personal, Reeves said. It was strong enough to make him want to unearth his past. I thought of it not as revenge, but as reclaiming. Keanu Reeves leaves Colbert speechless with an incredible reflection on death. So this happened in May. He was on Stephen Colbert promoting John Wick 3, and they're always goofing around. He's a comedian, and suddenly Keanu Reeves got very serious and very deep suddenly. He doesn't joke around about death, right, because of his background. So he was there to promote the third in the trilogy. This is the first movie, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. It came out in 1989, and George Carlin was the guy who was in the telephone booth. They would time travel in the telephone booth. And the funniest line of all is they called Socrates Socrates. I don't remember, that was my favorite. They go, oh, it's Socrates. And then in 1991, they made the sequel, Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. And right now, they're in production for Bill and Ted's Face the Music. And I think it's coming out in 2020. And the point of the film is, I guess Bill and Ted have to write the perfect rock song to save humanity. That's the arc of the story. So he's here to promote Face the Music. Actor Keanu Reeves not only managed to answer one of the hardest questions of all time, but he did so in a way that left The Late Show host Stephen Colbert at a rare loss for words. The two were bantering on Friday's show about the upcoming Bill and Ted Face the Music, the long-awaited third film in the franchise. Reeves said it would find the duo trying to write a song to save the entire universe. Help us tell more of the stories that matter from voices that too often remain unheard. And so Reeves says, if they fail, it's the end of the universe. And then Colbert replies, you're facing your own mortality and the mortality of all existence. Wow. What do you think happens when we die, Keanu Reeves? The audience laughed at the unexpectedly deep question. The John Wick actor paused, exhaled, and then delivered an answer for the ages, now going viral on Twitter. So Keanu Reeves looks at Stephen Colbert and he says, I know that the ones who love us will miss us. Colbert and the entire late night show audience were briefly speechless. As the audience reacted with a collective awe, Colbert simply mouthed the words, "Wow," then reached over and shook Reeves' hand. The host was silent for a full 10 seconds before wrapping up the segment. So I just wanted to show this to you. When I was teetering. I had this Keanu Reeves story in my mind for 10 years. I've been tracking him for 10 years, all the films, all the interviews. And when I saw this, I thought, oh, I've got to do a Dharma talk on this guy. I think he's just incredible. So, everybody's goofing around, and then suddenly you ask him a question about death, and it's something that Keanu Reeves doesn't take lightly because of his family history. It's not something you joke about.
What do you think happens when we die, Keanu Reeves?
I know that the ones who love us will miss us.
John Wick, Chapter 3, Parabellum is in theaters next Friday. Keanu Reeves, everybody. We'll be right back with Tootsie Star.
So I just thought that was just really amazing. I mean, that is like a Zen master, right? And this comes from the heart. And I tear up when I see it. So, as a Buddhist minister, we really don't know what happens when we die. I'm watching The Good Place right now on Netflix. None of us really know. I watched a documentary with Barbara Walters, or it might have been the guy from Driving Miss Daisy. What's his? Morgan Freeman. It was one of those two. But they went to every major religious tradition and asked them what happened when you die. And they were all very confident in explaining exactly what happens when you die, but none of them agreed with each other. I found it kind of embarrassing. They all have totally different afterlife mythology. And so, Reverend Rada says, we just don't know. But we do know that the relationships you have with people live on, and that never dies. And the people who loved you miss you. And, if that happens to all of us, we'd be very lucky to live a life of authenticity and have all of the people who know us think of us and remember us and honor us for the rest of it. That our lives made a difference, and it really matters. So I just wanted to show you examples of people's lives who have been completely transformed and affected by Buddhist practice. And I think Keanu Reeves is one of those people. I think it's interesting that he won't admit he's Buddhist, but I really think he doesn't want to become the Richard Gere, because then everything, like they'll ask him about the Dalai Lama, who's going to be the new Dalai Lama, or, you get those kind of questions. You become the spokesman for Buddhism. And he likely wants to practice, but he probably doesn't want to be the spokesman, the celebrity for Buddhism, which I think I can respect. So the other thing about reading about tragedy, we had Shotsuki Hoyo service last night. Everybody who had a family member die in November comes to November Shotsuki Hoyo. When you read Keanu Reeves' life, you realize that, you're not the only one that's had suffering or tragedy visited upon you. You're not a victim. It's relatively common. It's part of being human. And you're not the victim. And that it's something that needs to be dealt with and transcended. And that I think these regular memorial services that we have in the Buddhist tradition helps us have a healthy relationship with death. I've mentioned this at memorial services. In my Christian background, my grandfather died when I was 10, and it was super sad, and we had a funeral. But then once the funeral was over, it was like it was in our rearview mirror, and we had closure, and we never really talked about it again. It was settled and done, and that it was over. In the Japanese and Buddhist tradition, we keep bringing it out and looking at it and dealing with it. It's an ongoing healing process. And I searched the internet, and I heard one reverend say this, that the theory is that because of American pioneers traveling west on wagon train, and I've looked this up, I've done more research. It's mainly the Oregon Trail. I guess the Oregon Trail was really brutal, and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people died on the Oregon Trail. And when you're on a wagon train and someone dies, you have to dig a hole as fast as you can and put them in the ground and move and keep moving for the good of the family. So this idea that you kind of put it in your rearview mirror and move on for the sake of the wagon train, that might be the cultural origins of the way we handle death in America. It's tragic. We deal with it on that day, and we just keep moving forward. And the history I read about the Oregon Trail was really quite horrific, the number of deaths. They would actually pull over and dig the grave site before the person had died. The person wasn't even, they were dying, and they took a break and they would dig the hole. So it was like, chop, chop, let's go, say a few words. And it's really quite sad. But I think this might be this cultural heritage we have. And so I think the way Keanu Reeves has dealt with it, of getting it back out again and using it for John Wick, I think that's really been a healing, cathartic process. But it's still not something to joke about. It's very serious. So you may transcend it, but like he said, you still miss them. You will always miss them. You never get over it. They're just not physically, but the relationship is still alive. Any thoughts or comments?
My comment is, I know you like Joseph Campbell, so I wanted to acknowledge that Siddhartha and Neo are the hero with 1,000 faces.
Oh, really?
And John Wick, right? Because they're all on that same path. It's the same story, the monomyth.
Yeah. So Eugene's talking about the journey, the hero's journey. So there's this arc of the hero's journey. So these are mythological stories that are communicating this spiritual journey that we go on. So Luke Skywalker, John Wick, Neo, these are all this motif, this genre of story that Joseph Campbell talks about. Thank you so much.
As far as Keanu's non-Buddhist Buddhism, I feel like I've been a fan of his for a long time too, and like you're describing, trying to figure out, what's the real deal with him, and I think he likes to keep it private. Right, in the clip you showed with the interview, he seems almost uncomfortable in a public way, and so what I find since I've been coming here is, we're talking about something that should be kind of self-evident or self-generated, this organic teaching and learning and practice. And it's something that has to be experienced in one way. And so it is difficult to share it with somebody who may not be on that path or understand it. So I think that's part of also his reluctance to either be the spokesperson because of his celebrity status, but it is meaningful to him. So I notice in that clip, he's kind of like struggling back and forth of like, I really want to talk about this, but I don't want to talk about it. But this is what I mean. If you know what I mean, I don't think you know what I mean.
Right.
But
yeah, I agree. I like watching it.
It's actually not that surprising to not say I'm a Buddhist, in the sense of it's a concept that you're applying to something that's not supposed to rely on concept. and it sounds kind of finite when you say I'm a.
And it's not an identity.
It's not an identity.
Right.
And I could, like Eugene was saying, I could see where if you make the proclamation, a lot of people bring misconceptions to what being a Buddhist means, and therefore he might find himself being suddenly criticized
Yes.
in a way that then makes him potentially feel like he would have to defend his position.
Yeah.
And I kind of like that he's just not saying it, he's doing it.
Yeah, and I have to admit, I have a little, I have a hidden agenda. I just think it would be so great for membership if he said he was Buddhist. So that's my agenda.
Yeah. So this is maybe a little dark, but you know, I was living with someone, and I don't know, something. He goes, "Oh, well, it doesn't matter anyways. In 100 years, I don't care. No one's going to remember you, and they're not going to remember." And you know, I've thought a lot about that. And you think about how much do I think about my great. And it's kind of a sobering thought. And like sometimes I'll put on watch, like I'll put on a 1950 World Series match that was famous. God, all the people that are gone. I think there was a famous Greek soldier who apparently was looking at the field of soldiers, and he stopped and he just started weeping because he knew enough. And I tried to think, well, so I agree with what his meaning is, but it seems like it also transit. And I guess maybe to your mathematician, systems theory, every little initial eventually propagates through the whole system. And perhaps that's where, instead of being immediate, it kind of propagates through the future.
That's what I was going to go with.
Okay, yeah. So that's my thought on it.
Yeah.
But,
so the way I look at it is the choices I make today is going to affect my great grandchildren. You know what I mean? Like and then the other thing is too about that is the achievements don't live on, but the relationships with our loved ones.
They do. They propagate through.
Yeah.
The downside of that is that if you do something wrong, you don't know what the ultimate consequences of that is either.
Right. But Buddhism, I mean, getting us to think about these things are big questions, and they're important questions. The matrix way of living is you just don't even think about it, and you're just not aware of it. And I've had relatives that had a kind of an epiphany near death, and it was really good. But I think Buddhism wants us to kind of have that epiphany, now, and live your life. It's nice to have a moment before death, but it's so much better to have it earlier.
Oh, I agree. And the whole thing of, I always come back to foundational things, impermanence, and the whole live in the basically coming from the. So what you have is.
Right.
So, thanks.
Very good.
I have two comments. One is about styles of celebrating death. So we just passed Dia de los Muertos, which is the Day of the Dead, that Hispanic cultures celebrate. And of course, that style is that the dead are kind of living, right? And that you I don't know, you kind of described it as taking them out and then celebrating their lives. And then there's sort of like the I don't know, I guess the idea that they live on as long as you remember them, right? So similar to as Keanu Reeves was describing, that your memory and your relationship with them lives on, and you celebrate them in death, or you I don't know, party with them in death, essentially. Right. And that goes on as long as you remember them. So that's kind of interesting, a different style of thinking about celebrating death. But I was also thinking about Keanu Reeves' idea of not identifying as a Buddhist, and it's something that I'm also kind of struggling with. So I work at Cal State Fullerton, I'm a professor there, and it's always a little tricky, or that's the way I'd put it, to be in the classroom, and I think you have to be careful with how you present any kind of material that might kind of lead into, discussions of religion. I'm not a religious teacher, I'm a psychologist. Right. So it's just not really appropriate for a lot of my, the settings that I'm in. But I had a student who asked me, she was graduating and she wanted to know something really badly. She wanted to know, what religion are you? And since, as I said, she was done, and I thought, okay, it's okay. And I told her, I go to a Buddhist church. I didn't say I was Buddhist. I said I go to a Buddhist church, and she said I knew it, right? And she's actually very religious, and I was close to her as a student. She's Christian, very, very religious. She said, I knew it. She said, I always, I would say things, and then you would talk with me, and I would realize you're like not quite agreeing with me, but you're not judging me in any way, and I don't know what was happening, but I just knew it, right? And so it's interesting. I'm still kind of trying to decide how to take that. Like, I'm not sure. Does that mean, I don't know what's happening? Does that mean I'm practicing, but I still struggled with the identity of it? I don't know. Right. But it's something I'm kind of working on.
Yeah, very good. So that De los Muertos, that Coco movie was really good. And I think there's a real overlap between the Buddhist tradition and that celebration or that observance with, you look at death and it's a healthy relationship. So I've always been intrigued by it. And I don't tell everybody I'm a Buddhist minister. Like, I don't go to the car wash and go, hey, I'm a Buddhist minister. The only time I get in trouble is they see Reverend on my check, and then they think I'm Christian. I don't know. Do I just go with it? Or do I? So most people, I think they think I'm a Protestant. I don't know. I don't know if I'm supposed to say, I'm not that kind of Reverend, or I don't know what to say. Go ahead.
I have two things. And one thing was when you were talking about handing down our identity. To say that so much of what I've learned is not positive reinforcement, but negative reinforcement, and things I've learned way that make me do things different. That also, the first class I ever went to, on what do we call ourselves, or when do we call what brings you? And she said, children. So in the Catholic religion or whatever, what is that turning point? What makes you sudden, from studying Buddhism, reading about it? I mean, what is your head? What?
The way I explain this is I don't think Buddhism is any different than any other skill or practice in our lives. And so, I mean, like I mentioned before, in Algebra 1, I wasn't studying, and I went from like B's to D's. And then my dad said, if you don't maintain a B, you're not going to play football. And so, I don't know what that is. So anyway, I started studying nonstop to raise my grade so I could play football. And I don't know, after a while, I just realized I was thinking like a mathematician. I wasn't, you know what I mean? It just became who I was. It resonated with me. And just one day I knew that I was going to be a math major. And I think it happens to dancers. I mean, I don't know what causes it, but somewhere along the way, you're not just taking lessons, you're actually a dancer. Or you're not just taking piano lessons, you actually are a musician. It's how you think and feel, and it's kind of how you interact with the world. So I think it's something like that. And so it's really self-identifying. That you're on the beam, you feel grounded, it's authentic for you. Nobody tells you, and there's no test. So it's somehow you just realize that this is who I am. I say it's not a conversion, it's more like recognizing an old friend. You just recognize that. I mean, you just it becomes a want to and not a have to, maybe. So, but it's up to each individual to decide or not. And it's not, I don't think it's done with forethought or self-power or effort. It's just your thing. Like, I never really decided to become a minister. That sounds kind of odd, but we were at the San Francisco International Airport waiting to go to Japan, and I was with 15 people, and we all looked scared to death. And somebody said, like, how did this happen? Like, what are we doing? And one person said, I know what happened. We never said no. We just never said no. Every time they asked us to do something, we just did it. That was our error. That's what we did. So it was kind of like that. It was just very gradual. And it just seemed like every step was just the natural next. Okay, thank you very much. Can we close with Gasho? Namo Amida Butsu. Naman Dawits. Naman. Thank you.